Hello everybody, this is Mr. McNair, and this is our last part of the Chapter 8 review covering questions 40, 41, 42, 46, and 47. Alright, this first question says, determine how many solutions a quadratic has by using the discriminant. Well, our discriminant formula we know is a part of the quadratic formula, which is b squared minus 4ac. This is the discriminant formula. Alright. So what you're going to do from here is you're just going to take your values of a, b, and c, and you're going to plug them in. One thing you always want to check for, though, is that your quadratic equation is set equal to 0. All right, so here a is negative 2, b is 4, and c is negative 2. We take these values and plug them in. So b squared, so that's going to be 4 squared, minus 4 times a times c. Okay, so from there we can just go ahead and calculate out our values. We know that 4 squared is 16, minus 4 times negative 2 times negative 2, which we know is 16 also. 16 minus 16 is 0. Now, 16 is the discriminant. All right, 0 is the discriminant. Okay, so when you have 0 as a discriminant, this means that there is one solution. Okay? Whenever the discriminant equals 0, there's one solution. All right? Next, here we're going to do the same thing. Here a is 1, b is negative 2, c is positive 4. Plugging that into our discriminant formula, b squared minus 4 times a times c. We know that negative 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 minus 16 is negative 12. So this is our discriminant, which means that since negative 12 is the discriminant, whenever the discriminant is negative, there are no real solutions. Okay? So let's go back one more time. So when the discriminant is 0, there's one solution. When the discriminant is negative, there are no real solutions. All right, next one. Here, once again, you need to have 0 on one side before you start dealing with the discriminant or the quadratic formula. So let's subtract 2x squared first, because you have to have 0 on one side. So those cancel out. You get 0 equals negative 2x squared minus 3x plus 2. All right, here a equals negative 2. B is negative 3, C is positive 2. All right, plug that into your discriminant formula again. So negative 3 squared minus 4 times A, which is negative 2, times C, which is positive 2. Here we know negative 3 squared is 9. We know that 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. Negative 8 times 2 is negative 16. We know that 9 minus negative 16 is positive 25. All right, so when the discriminant is positive, that means there are two solutions. Okay, so once again, recap over the discriminant topic. When the discriminant is positive, there's two solutions. When the discriminant is negative, there are no real solutions. And when the discriminant is 0, there's one solution. Those are the three cases that you could have with the discriminant: positive, negative, and 0. All right, next one. Here's a word problem. Number 46. Approximate. The height of a fireworks rocket launched from a platform of 35 meters above the ground can be approximated by h equals negative 5t squared plus 30t plus 35, where h is the height in meters and t is the time in seconds. Find the maximum height of the rocket. Now, there's a couple things that you can tell about this rocket. Number one, you could tell that this rocket is being shot upwards. So the path is going to be looking like this. We know that it's going to look like that because A is negative, so the parabola has to open down. And because also it is a parabola and they want us to find the maximum height, we know that the maximum height of any parabola is always going to occur at the vertex. Okay? Now, from there, we also know that the vertex formula is x equals the opposite of b over 2a. But that gives you the x coordinate of the vertex. That's this part right here. The maximum height is going to be given by the y value. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and find our vertex. We'll find the x value, and then once we have that x value, we're going to plug it in so that we can find the y value. And here, in this case, is h, the height. Okay? So let's do that. In this problem, we see that a is -5, b is 30, and c is 35. So let's plug those in. The opposite of b here is -30 over 2 times a. A is -5. -30 divided by 2 times -5. Well, 2 times -5 is -10, which simplifies to 3. So this is x here is 3. Well, this is actually a t in this problem. This is what they use. So we know that the time here is 3 seconds. And y, that's going to be your height. So we're going to take this 3 and we're going to plug it in for both of those. So we're going to be plugging in -5 times 3 squared plus 30 times 3 plus 35 to find our height. Okay, so let's see. -5 times 3 squared. I'm just going to type this right in the calculator. Plus 30 times 3 plus 35. That gives us a value of 80. So our maximum height of this rocket is 80 meters. All right. Now, part B, find how long it took to get to this height. Well, we actually already did that. T is time. Here, our t was also represented by x. So we already found that. That was 3 seconds. Okay? So at 3 seconds, we had a height of 80 meters. Great. Now, there's another part to this problem, part C. Find how long it took for the rocket to hit the ground. So we have this parabola. Once again, I'm just going to draw this parabola. And it hits the ground. We're going to talk about here. So the height, therefore, we want it to be 0. So let's plug in 0 for that. 0 equals -5t squared plus 30t plus 35. From here, there's a plethora of ways that you can solve this. You can factor out the GCF and then factor the trinomial. You could use a quadratic formula. You can solve it by completing the square, whichever one you want to do. I personally, on problems like this, I generally use the quadratic formula simply because most of the time dealing with real life situations, you get decimals involved. This one, however, you can see that you can factor out a -5 out of all those. But I'm going to go ahead and just use my quadratic formula. So here we see that A is -5, B is 30, C is 35. So let's plug that into the quadratic formula, which is the opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Dun-dun-dun-dun. That doesn't get old, does it? All right, so plugging in the opposite of b here, that would be -30 plus or minus the square root of b squared, so that's 30 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. All right, great. Let's plug in our radicand, our discriminant, into our calculator so we can get the value. 30 squared minus 4 times -5 times positive 35. That gives us 1600. So this is -30 plus or minus the square root of 1600 all over 2 times -5 is -10. We know that the square root of 1600 is 40, so this is -30 plus or minus 40 over -10. And now we just simply solve. -30 minus 40, that's -70. -70 divided by -10 is +7. -30 plus 40, that's 10. And 10 divided by -10 is -1. All right, now, those are the solutions, 7 seconds and -1 seconds. Now, which one of those does not make sense? Well, -1 doesn't. That's erroneous. All right, it is you can't shoot a rocket and it land -1 second in the past. So not yet, at least. So here we know that this will hit the ground in 7 seconds. All right, one more word problem. The width of a rectangle is 4 feet shorter than its length. The area of the rectangle is 42 square feet. Find the length and width, round answers to the nearest tenth. Okay. So this problem, you have this rectangle here. All right. It says that the width is 4 feet shorter than the length. So we don't know what the length is. Let's just go ahead and call the length x. And let's say the width, because we know the width is 4 feet shorter than the length, we'll call that x minus 4. We know that the area of this is 42 square feet. All right. Now, we can relate all of these pieces of data because we know that the length times the width has to equal the area. Okay, x times x minus 4 equals 42. From there, if you took this x, you could distribute it in there. You would get x squared minus 4x equals 42. And now, once again, you have, you know that you're going to have a quadratic equation, and there are a plethora of ways that you can solve for this one. I'm going to go ahead and solve this by completing the square, simply because that's what we did in this section. But you could subtract 42 from both sides if you wanted to and solve it by quadratic formula, blah, 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 blah. But once again, I'm going to complete the square. So completing the square here, you see that b is negative 4. So when you complete the square, you always find b over 2 squared to add to both sides. So negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides to complete the square. So we have x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals now 46. Factor out the left perfect square trinomial. You get x minus 2 squared equals 46. And then we're going to solve this by square roots. So get rid of the squared by square rooting both sides. The square and the square root cancel out. So we get x minus 2 equals the positive and negative square root of 46. We can continue to solve that by adding 2 to both sides. So let's add 2 here and here. So we get x equals 2 plus or minus the square root of 46. Now, those are the answers. Now, when you plug in 2 plus the square root of 46 into your calculator, the value that you get out is 2 plus the square root of 46. You get, this is approximately 8.78. They wanted us to round to the nearest tenth, so let me go back. That's going to be 8.8. And when you plug in 2 minus the square root of 46 in your calculator, you get approximately negative 4.8. Now, which one of these values does not make sense? Well, the one that doesn't make sense is this one. Because once again, you can't have a negative side length. So we know that the value for the length is approximately 8.8. So this is about 8.8, and therefore this is about 4.8 because it's 4 less than that. Okay, so those are the dimensions of this rectangle. All right, hopefully this video has been helpful to you, and good luck studying for your test.